What is the cruelest thing a parent has ever done to you? This one is easy. Sadly, my mother called Child Protective Services on me last year just because I wasn't talking to her. My world was turned upside down. With one phone call. One day a sheriff came to my house. I was surprised because I'm not one to get into trouble or piss anyone off. He said he was there to check on my and my children's welfare. I was confused. He said my mother had called and said I hadn't talked to her in over a year. My husband was abusive and holding me captive and I was doing heroin and meth. I looked at him and said, "You've got to be kidding me." He assured me it was for real. I told him I spoke to her about 2 months ago. There's no ball and chain behind me and I damn sure ain't doing heroin or meth. He actually laughed. I told him she's got issues and I don't want anything to do with her. He said, "Will you look healthy? You're not locked in a cellar and your kids are at school where they should be, so I'll be on my way." I thanked him for his time and off he went. I was steaming pissed that day. I wondered what was wrong with that woman. Now I really won't talk to her. The next day, during the afternoon before the kids got home from school, there was a knock on the door. I opened the door and there is a sheriff and social worker. Dumbfounded, I asked if I could help them. They tell me someone has made a report to CPS and they're there to investigate. I was floored, to say the least. So we sit down and the social worker begins to interrogate me. She then begins to list the allegations. She tells me I'm supposedly mentally ill, doing heroin and meth, being manipulated and abused by my husband. My children run around unsupervised, the kids aren't adequately cared for, etc. I broke down and sobbed in disbelief. I asked who made this report and was told it was anonymous. I knew by the heroin and meth and husband abusing me bit exactly who it was. The show had just begun. Another sheriff arrived shortly after. They asked if they could search my home. I said for what and was told if I didn't consent they would take my kids away. Reluctantly I said fine, I have nothing to hide as the sheriffs are upstairs searching. I'm still being interrogated downstairs by the social worker. My husband arrived and was very upset about the situation. Naturally, he's even more angry seeing me a mess in tears, having to be asked appalling questions. Next thing you know there's a knock at the door. Lo and behold it's another sheriff. He waltzes in and I ask what the hell he's here for. The sheriff came downstairs with an empty box that my husband had under our bed from a gun he purchased. They asked where the gun was and he replied it was in the car. They asked to see it and he refused. He's not a felon and it's registered and completely legal. That seemed to piss them off, but they had no grounds to take it or see it. So here we are sitting in the living room with a social worker and sheriff while another one is in the kitchen and one in the dining room. Why? I couldn't even tell you. The sheriff had a brown paper bag and said there was some evidence in it. He pulled out some pill bottles. He asked me what they were for. I told him I suffer from depression and anxiety. I also take something for an opiate addiction. I'm in recovery and take a preventable medicine. Well, they thought they got me there. Mentally unstable and a drug addict. Perfect ammunition to use against me. They looked at me as though I was despicable scum. I could feel the judgment through my bones. The social worker asked my husband and me to accompany her to the kitchen. That's when she pulls out the drug tests. She asked if we were willing to take a voluntary drug test. We said absolutely. He went first. Then I went there. We were in our home with 3 sheriffs and a CPS worker peeing in a cup to prove ourselves not to be drug addicts. I felt completely violated. The test took a few minutes to come out but they were negative. Almost disappointed. She let us see them and told us they were clean. I felt validated but still so angry. My kids come home from school and ask what's going on. I didn't even know what to say. I just told them to get a snack and go to their room and I'd be with him shortly. The social worker said we could wrap up for now, but she'd be in touch. I kindly LED'd them out. My husband and I just looked at each other and didn't even say a word. We were both too upset to even talk. Every aspect of our privacy and humanity had been stripped of us, but then we had to explain to the kids what was going on. After that, we had to clean our home because when the sheriffs went through our belongings, they had just thrown things about and had no respect for our things. The next day the kids informed me after school that a social worker had come to visit them to ask them questions about mom and dad. They were scared and upset. I told them it would be okay. As long as they told the truth, everything would be fine. We've got nothing to hide. The social worker paid me a few more visits each time. I was cooperative and willing to do whatever was needed, anything to get them to go away and stay away. Turns out my mother had called the principal at school asking him questions about my kids. Were they stinky? Dirty? Did they look well fed? Things like that? Then someone who claimed to be an uncle called and did the same. The principal got so uncomfortable he called the social worker and told her he was being harassed and didn't want to deal with it. She finally said without saying in certain words, it was my mother who filed the report. She admitted that the situation was very unusual. She paid me a last visit to let me know that not one claim could be substantiated. She apologized for the intrusion. She told me the case was closed and she would report back to my mother. That all is well. Not only after having our house ripped apart, taking drug tests, having my children interrogated at school, and calling my psychiatrist, pharmacy, family, and friends who we deemed fit enough parents. I can't begin to tell you what this situation has done to me. You're probably wondering if I confronted my mother. I sent her a text message after all was said and done, and asked her if she had any idea what she had done. I asked what she was thinking. I know what she did to not only me but her grandkids. Well, she had nothing to say about it, so I left it there. If she ever comes to her senses and wants to explain herself and apologize profusely, I'll give her a chance. But never will I go out of my way to have any kind of relationship with her. As far as the kids, they want nothing to do with her. That is their choice. I told them they were free to talk to her and see her if they wished. They should not suffer anymore. They said they would rather not. So be it.